Hey gang, today I wanted to take you through my process for a heavy metal minimalist style Dark Angel. I will make more for other legions, chapters, and factions, and cover theory like lighting and composition all here on this channel. Step 1. Base coats. For the green areas, I'm using Terrestrial Titan from the Army Painter. If you prefer Warhammer brand paint, then Nagaroth Knight should do. Basically any dark purple is good here. Using a green undercoat here can make the armor look too salamandery or bright. For Dark Angels, we're looking for an almost black-green armor. Using this purple undercoat will make use of this complementary color pairing to make the top and highlight greens more rich and deep compared to if you just used a green or black undercoat. The purple might seem too dark, especially after the Null Noil for this to matter, but it will be subtle and it will make a difference. This undercoat is so we don't need to buy more shades other than Nuln, so instead of using a purple shade on here and a brown shade on the ivory, we can just use Null Noil all over and trust the undercoat to tint it. This base layer doesn't need to be perfect, but try and make the coverage uniform. This will help in step 3 as patchy base coats may show through the top coat later, especially as we will be doing thin layers of top coat to let the undercoat tint show through. Since the trim is also green, I can't really show you a second colour, so I'm going to do the Aquila on the chest instead. Dark Angels have a nice ivory to complement the emerald, so I use Dorado skin from Army Painter or Flayed One's Flesh from Warhammer. To get a nice ivory from the Null Noil on this, you want a more saturated cream or pink-toned paint as your base here. Be careful as the contrast in values between the pale ivory base and the dark purple base is very large, so go back over to fix any mistakes before the next step. Step 2. Null Noil. This bit does not need to be careful. Just slop it on, puddle it in the edges and recesses for darker shadows, and try and do entire panels in as few strokes as you can, otherwise you may get tide lines as it dries. Make sure to properly shake your Null Noil for a minute, as I've had a couple of times I didn't and it's dried glossy because I didn't mix in the pigment well enough with the medium fluid. While this dries, make a cup of tea and think about the lion forest walking, unlike another Primarch who can't walk at all. Like this video, subscribe, and potentially become a channel member to get exclusive channels in my Discord where I post photos of my kitten and take requests for tutorials to make. I also stream painting on here and Twitch if you want to come hang out and ask questions or watch me be bad at Space Marine 2 and other games. Step 3. Top coats. For the green, I'm using Blighted Green by the Army Painter. Warhammer's Nocturne Green would be a good alternate, or if you find that too dark, then Lupercal Green is a bit more saturated. Neither are an exact match to the Blighted Green, however. These may also seem very dark as options, but the highlights will bring the saturation to the armor. On pieces like the pauldron with trim, these are what I call inside corners. I leave about a millimeter or half millimeter gap between my top coat and the corner crease to keep that slight purplish outline from the trim and to save me from accidentally going up the wall onto the trim. If you do a couple of thin layers, leaving the coverage kind of patchy and uneven, this can look more battle-worn, and you can use those brushstroke lines and patchinesses to help plan out any weathering or battle damage you want to add. I don't really do battle damage, and this isn't a tutorial for that, so I'm just doing a kind of thick and keeping it uniform, kind of flat looking. I just prefer it looking super new and clean. Be most careful in the recessed armor, such as on this arm under his elbow and wrist plate, to not get the bright blue on the perpendicular sides of the elbow and wrist extruded surfaces. I'm still trying to keep that millimeter or so border on the inside corners, but don't worry too much where the gap gets too thin, as long as those perpendicular sides stay clean and dark. Trim only has outside corners. This is where the panel reaches a cliff rather than a wall, so if you use the side of your brush along the top, you shouldn't get much overflow down the cliff sides. Again, try and keep the sides of the trim the dark shaded colour. It's hard to fix this if you spill over, as it is that base colour plus Null Noil. I recommend to pick a plane to be the top and then keep perpendicular sides dark over the whole mini. On the Ivory Aquila, we're using the same paints as for the undercoat here on the top coat. So here I'm covering all front-facing surfaces while keeping dark lines for definition. If you use a brighter colour here, then you may need to go all the way to pure white on the highlights, which I'm trying to avoid as it can make the green look dull and grey next to it. Step 4. Highlights. On the green, I'm using Greenskin by the Army Painter. Warhammer brand Warpstone Glow is your closest match otherwise. Here, I'm essentially outlining all my top coat with outside edges, or like on this elbow panel and sculpted edges in the middle of it. Because we're doing these over the top coat, if you make a mess, we can go back over this later with more top coat colour. So go all over and edge up all of the edges. I tend to water down my paint a bit for this just so I can use a smaller brush so the paint doesn't dry before I put it on the Mini. If you find the edges too pale, mix in some black until you find a shade you're happy with. Adding more top coat will lead to more subtle edges, but with the green here we're looking for almost neon edges to accentuate that colour. This is probably the bit that took the longest, as I wanted to be careful to not have to go back and fix them. Since it is a Mini, you probably won't notice faults here unless you're 5 centimeters away from your paint job, so don't worry too much. If you're doing an entire army like this, then I probably wouldn't recommend sub-assembling, but it does help. If you're going into a fully built and glued Mini, you only need to do step 3 onwards on parts you can easily reach with a brush. This will by accident make a nice shadow area behind guns and under arms that will make him look a little more dramatic and lit. With the purple undercoat, this will lead to a nice shadow against the green. With sub-assembly, you can get every surface to look flat and uniform with lighting, so ending with a more cartoony or classic heavy metal result. The only difference this will have to actual heavy metal styling is not doing the highlight lines on the plate surface of the shoulders and knees. This is just a personal preference. I don't like how it looks, so I don't do it. On the trim, I'm treating this more like metallic, so I tend to pick outer edges or corners to highlight, and then a secondary bright spot if I feel like the vibe is right. Try and feather out these highlight spots to avoid harsh tide lines. Back to the Aquila. Now I will use my Ivory White from Army Painter or Wraithbone from Warhammer to pick out the outermost tips of the wing feathers, and some of these highest bits of the skull. Doing the Aquila like this will give you a kind of basic non-metallic metal ivory which looks really nice with the dark green and the bright green highlights. The rest of the owl. From this video, learn the things and put it to use on the rest of the Mini. This style is good for quick, consistent minis that look good with only a handful of paints. In total, this arm took me about 15 to 20 minutes, not including the Nuln Oil drying tea break. When I painted the rest of the Mini afterwards, it took about the same time as a single arm, maybe a little longer, as it's very simple as a process and meant to be fast. So this is my fully finished Dark Angel in Furnace Marine in this style, with all of his markings free-handed on. You can use transfers, I'm just lazy and I don't have a sheet for him to use. So if you use transfers, remember to use matte varnish over the top to get rid of that shininess. And here is a list of all of the things I used in this video. I will do a Deathwing variant at some point as well, so I can show the ivory in a bit more detail. And again, I will make more videos for lenses, various guns, and freehanding hacks, so don't panic if yours doesn't look exactly like mine. I don't tend to use transfers, but I can cover those in a video as well if needed. As always, thanks for watching. Check out my other hobby content or my dumbass gaming content on the main channel. Like, sub, leave a comment how you got on, Discord is in the description, and see ya.